Now, I've made a video which was surprisingly popular with the British, in which I actually discuss what the real problems with Britain is in 2025. And according to my take, it's safetyism and welfare. And these are the two things that are leading to the surveillance state and the ability of the state to import migrants and to crack down on any type of dissent, to be able to monitor the internet, to be able to debank people that have something to say against the system. And of course, the welfare is something that prevents people from making the smart choice of having kids. Because the normal way is that you need to have an extended family so that when you're old, your kids can take care of you just like you took care of them. But if we're going to kick the can down the road and say, well, the government is going to take care of me, the government then doesn't produce wealth. It has to take from other people, so it has to take money from people that did have kids and give it to those that didn't. Now, I've been called a doomer for saying that this is the problem. I disagree with that because I think the problem will just solve itself. And there will come a time when the welfare system is going to collapse simply because it's a Ponzi scheme. There's going to be way too many people that require money and way too few people putting in. And at that point, the problem will solve itself. Is it going to be nice? No, because if the problem isn't going to be fixed with a self-controlled demolition, it's going to be an incredibly rocky boat. But in this video, I want to address something else. Some other problems that people have, which is the fertility rates. And that is, why don't people have kids? I don't think not having kids is an existential problem. I think it's an economic problem. Again, I think it threatens the welfare state. I don't think it threatens the human race. There is absolutely no reason why 2 generations from now that are going to be smaller in number, they're going to face abject poverty and they're going to start having a lot of kids simply out of survival necessity. As I mentioned before, in a place where you don't have welfare, then having extended families is the only way that you can guarantee you have an investment when you're old. And so I'm not really concerned by that, but okay, let's analyze if there is any reason why people don't have kids right now and how could it be fixed. Now, a lot of people look to the government for the solution because in modern era, people don't pray to God anymore. You know, people don't hope that divinity will intervene. People hope that the government will intervene. And they give the government messianic properties to the point where the government is being viewed as it can fix everything. Whether it's the weather, environmentalism, whether it's racism with anti-racist policies, or the birth rates, the government is always the solution. I think the government in this case is the actual problem. And let me explain what I mean by this. So you have, number one, the child labor laws, which are beneficial, but as we're going to discuss, they do prevent people having kids. And the other one is cultural. The idea that you shouldn't have kids when you're a teenager, right? So like if someone has a child at the age of 16, that's a horrifying thing. That's not something good. And the encouragement of people having kids at the age of 25, 30, 35. As well as the destruction of the family unit. Like all of these 3 things, you do not get to see them in the Middle East. You do not get to see them in places that have high fertility rates. And so they're inconveniencing factors. Like they provide our bedrock for Western civilization, where we have strong child labor laws, right? But they come at the expense of fertility rates. So let me explain what I mean by this, right? Because it does sound a little bit crazy. It's like, okay, so V, do you want the kids to go back into the mines? Like, do you want them to play Minecraft? What the fuck is wrong with you? I don't want the kids to do anything. I'm just observing the reality. And the reality is that you have a lot of people that say, well, I can't afford to have kids. Like, did you notice that? It's an interesting take. Like, I can't afford to have kids. But in medieval time, people were much more poor and they could afford to have kids. Isn't that interesting? Like, how is it that now a family that's surrounded by all modern amenities and is living in comfort, and let's be honest, like, even the homeless don't really worry about starvation in a first world country. How is it that they don't have money to have kids while our ancestors that were actually facing famines and droughts and all the other things, they had kids? Well, that's the problem, because back then, kids at a certain age became self-sustaining. Like, you had a kid and he would go out on the farm, he would start working, like, you get another working hand. Or if the father was a burgermeister and, he was making battles or whatever, then the kid would actually start helping with the business, he would start helping with the shop. And so having a kid wasn't necessarily viewed as a debt to the family. It was actually being viewed as someone else that's producing. Now, again, I'm not saying that children should actually be placed in the mines, heaven forbid. But when I was in Romania, at the age of 16, I had a job. Now, I worked at a McDonald's. It's not a job that most people are proud of, right? Like, it's not something that I would put on a resume. But for me, at that age, it was a very formative experience, and I definitely enjoyed working at a McDonald's. Number one, I finally got access to my own money, so I didn't have to ask mommy and daddy for the money. Number two, it felt as if doing something that adults do, and honestly it did. Like, I had to work in a team, I had to be there on time, I had to start listening to the boss and understanding how it's like to be in an actual work environment. And I'm not going to lie, I actually enjoyed it. Other of my colleagues, they worked in call centers. Other of my colleagues, they went to various restaurants and places and they waited tables. I have a guy that was actually really good with home decorations. He knew how to put tiles and stuff, and he actually, worked on the black. I mean, it was illegal what he was doing, but he did go around, found people that needed something to be done in their household. He did it, got money for it. Now he has his own business. He did that at the age of 16. There are a lot of places in the world right now, and I think I would have to check what it's like in England as well. But even if it's legally to work at 16, it's culturally unthinkable. Like, it's considered child abuse. And so you end up with people that they get institutionalized into the education system. Like, from early childhood, at the age of 7, sometimes earlier if you count kindergarten, they get institutionalized into the education place where every single day they go to the education in order to quote-unquote learn the LGBTs. And basically, these are people that are taking off the workplace so that it actually looks good when the government makes the unemployment statistics. The problem is that even when they're 18 and they're adults, they're still not supposed to work. They're still supposed to actually go to university and keep on the educational grift, probably collecting some debt. Even if it's not like the American student debt, it's still a debt to the nation. Like, taxpayers have to pay for that so that some twat manages to get a gender studies degree, which she's not going to use anyway. And so, yeah, these people are indeed a debt to the family. Like, mommy and daddy may not have to necessarily pay for the university, but if the kid doesn't have a job and he is 22, 23 years old, mommy and daddy still needs to pay for wherever they live, pay for food, pay for electricity, pay for all of that. And so when you see people say it's expensive to have kids, well, yeah, because in a previous era, not even medieval time, but in our grandparents' era, no parent would be forced to pay for a 23-year-old kid. By this time, he was supposed to have his own family, he was supposed to produce his own wealth, and he was also supposed to live by himself. And so the educational grift, which, again, institutions paid by taxpayer money in order to indoctrinate people into leftist ideology and all of that, they are actually suppressing the birth rates. This is why you have high birth rates in places like the Middle East. They don't do this bullshit. Or you had high birth rates in places like China back in the day. They didn't do this bullshit. Europe didn't do this bullshit. Every country that had high birth rates didn't do this bullshit. Okay, we don't send children to the mines, but there is absolutely nothing wrong with a 16-year-old, for instance, to be working at a McDonald's and to flip some burgers. And I guarantee to you, most 16-year-olds actually want that. I wanted that. All of my friends wanted that. It was actually a celebration when I managed to get the job. Like, I applied to many places. And I did other types of work as well. I used to put cables for the internet back then, when you had like the early era of the internet, the LAN cables that had to go over building to building. I did that at the age of 17. Right? Like, I understand that you don't want kids to be in the sweatshops. I'm not arguing for that. But there are many jobs that young people can do. Jobs that, they're not detrimental to someone's health. They're not detrimental to someone's well-being. And there is absolutely no reason why these jobs are now considered culturally taboo. And of course, these jobs are also now filled with a lot of immigrants. Like, the idea is that, well, the population is too lazy to work. I keep hearing that, like Americans are too lazy to do the jobs that no one wants to do. British people are too lazy to do the job that no one wants to do. Norwegian people are too lazy to do the jobs that no one wants to do. So, like, all of a sudden, half the planet has become lazy, but we are so lucky that places like India exist, places like Pakistan exist, where, the last hardworking people of the planet are there. And so, if this was genuinely happening, like, first of all, social scientists should be concerned, like, what happens when those nations also become wealthy? Like, what happens when the entire planet becomes too lazy to do the jobs that no one wants to do? But secondly, it's obviously not true. A young person that has no experience but wants to work and has got, like, a lot of energy, they do want to do those jobs. Like, when I was a kid, I genuinely wanted to do those jobs. And I had people that even wanted to work in construction. Obviously, like, this is not a career, like, this is not something that they want to do for the rest of their lives, but as an entry point, as a starting job, in order to get used to how it's like to interact with other people and make some pocket change, was extremely good. I take into account that despite the fact that the payment is low, the kid doesn't have to pay bills. So, like, yeah, sure, I was being paid minimum wage. Which a lot of people say, well, how can you survive with minimum wage? I was 16. I didn't have to pay mortgage. I didn't have debts to pay. I didn't have loans. I wasn't paying for electricity. I wasn't paying for food, right? Like, all of that was my money. And all of a sudden, minimum wage is a lot. But that's not part of the conversation anymore, right? Like, the conversation is like, no, minimum wage is basically supposed to be like a career. You're supposed to live off of minimum wage. And yeah, so this is an uncomfortable truth. A lot of people don't like talking about it, but the exclusion of young people and teenagers off of the workplace is definitely one of the reasons why you have low birth rates. Because a lot of people will say, well, I can't afford to have a kid. And when they say that, they don't think about a 5-year-old, because trust me, like, a 5-year-old is not that expensive. They're thinking of a 23-year-old that goes to university and they have to pay tuition fees, and they also have to pay for that kid to have a place to stay. They have to pay his bills. And yeah, no, I believe them. Yeah, like, if you have to think like that, sure. That's not having a kid, that's having another adult in the house. Now, another reason that I mentioned before, and again, this is something that a lot of Westerners freak out, is teenage pregnancies. I said this, having a kid at the age of 16, it's incredibly controversial, right? Like, it's viewed as a negative thing. This wasn't viewed a negative thing in the time your grandfather was alive, nor any time in human history before that. And it's not viewed a negative thing right now in countries with high birth rates. Now, I'm not saying it's required, but what I am saying is that I'm observing the fact. And I can explain why it's important to have a kid early in life rather than later. The biggest factor has to do with the extended family. So if you have a kid when, let's say, the person is 18, right? The grandparents are still young. So your mom and dad, they're still young. They can help out. Now, imagine if you have a kid when you're 39 years old. Well, mom and dad, depending on when they had you, are probably pretty old right now. Hopefully, they're still alive, because, like, in my situation, I had the kid late. And so, one of my parents is dead. My wife's parents are very old. And so, like, the later you have the kid, the less likely it is for the grandparents to actually be able to help out. And also, help out financially. Like, it's one thing when mom and dad is still having a job and they have money and they can help you a little bit. It's another thing when mom and dad is already retired and they're getting their welfare check, which is basically like peanuts. And they also have to pay for all the medication because they're old, right? And so it is scary for people, right? Like if you have a kid when you're young and you're adventurous and you have a lot of energy and you can also get 2 jobs if needed. I'm exaggerating, but this is what people already thought afraid. But you have energy, right? So like you can actually consider traveling. You can consider getting work that's more difficult. The chances of being employed when you're young are also higher than when you're older. And so you also know that your parents can help out. Not necessarily financially, but like even if you're thinking, okay, well, I gotta go to work and there's no place to leave my kid, I'll leave it with my mom and dad. That helps. But if your parents are gone and you're like 35 and that's when you want to have a kid, and you need to go to a job interview and you're worried, it's like, oh, what happens with my 3-year-old? Like now he's alone in the house, like because my wife is at work. I don't have money to hire a nanny. I need to go to this job interview, right? It's a lot more difficult, and you also end up raising delinquents. Like if both mom and dad are constantly busy and they're not at home, who's going to discipline young Billy? If you don't have your own parents, your own grandparents. And so to summarize, yes, I do believe that the education system is a problem, why people have less kids, because people are looking at it from an economic point of view, and they're like, well, the kid is not someone that's going to bring money into the household. The kid is someone that's going to drain money from the household even by the age of 25. Assuming that he even gets a job, right? Because like there could be a possibility that the kid is 25 and he can't get a job, not because he doesn't want to, like maybe he does search, but like he finished gender studies and there's no job opportunities. What are you going to do? Like throw him on the streets? No parent is going to say that, right? So like education is number one. Having kids too late is number two. Grandparents aren't there. They're not helping out. Parents are less likely to get jobs. They're less adventurous. And of course, it's also the culture itself, right? Like there's a lot of things that shame people that have kids too early, and also the welfare. Right? Like the decision, it's like, it's okay if you don't have kids. There's not going to be any punishment. You're just going to have the state take care of you. And the state will take care of you as long as there's enough people paying in that did have kids. When the state is filled with elderly people, well, elderly people don't drive an economy. They don't go out partying. They don't go out clubbing. They don't spend money on consumerism, right? So like no spending, no economy, no taxes, no welfare. Let me know what you guys think though. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.